Welcome to another episode of Young Entrepreneurs with the Green Roof Team. My name is Nelson Fernandez, and we're here today with a special guest all the way from Australia, Tom Wedding. How are you doing today, Tom?
Yeah, doing great. I'm super pumped to jump on. It's super weird with the time differences. Like for you, it's nighttime, and for me, it's morning. So it's super weird to get your head around. But I live in the future. We're a day ahead here.
Sweet. Hey, if you can tell me what the weather's going to be in a couple hours, I would really appreciate that.
Yeah, it's pretty rainy at the moment, but hopefully the sun comes out. It's been summer here, so we've had lots of sun and very hot days. I think it's the opposite for you guys. You have winter at the moment, don't you?
We do.
Nice and
cold.
cold.
Fun.
And snowing in some places too. I'd love to see the snow. Like it never snows here, so it'd be interesting to come over to America and see the snow sometime.
Oh, the snow is beautiful for the first about a couple hours, maybe a day, but after that, yeah, I think we'll all be happy without snow.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, before we dive into today's episode, would you like to pitch to the audience about why they should listen to this episode and the podcast in general?
Yeah, definitely. So this episode, I'm going to share some pretty insightful things I'd say, just on being more free in your life and living how you want to be living. And so I think it's great to listen to this podcast because there's a lot of awesome people who jump on and share different perspectives and stories. And I think that's really what connecting with people is all about is hearing other people's stories. So I think it's well worth watching the podcast and listening to people's stories and what they have to share because there's always value you can gain from that.
Sweet. Okay. So I know personally I have not met you before a few minutes ago. So would you like to tell myself and the audience a bit about yourself?
Yeah, definitely. So I'm an entrepreneur at heart. I just love living life free. And entrepreneurship really does bring that to you. So I guess from a young age, I've always kind of, had that drive to make money in weird and unusual ways. And what I'm doing at the moment is kind of running a couple of online businesses. But originally I had started doing street performing. That's kind of where I started. And so that was pretty interesting. Went through street performing and then eventually had an injury, which was unfortunate, had to transition online. And so now I'm just, living online, basically working from my laptop anywhere in the world. And I'm traveling around Australia at the moment, but eventually hopefully go overseas. And that's kind of where I'm at.
How did you get into street performing?
Yeah, so I just quit an apprenticeship job because I hated it. I was like, no, this is not for me. I want more freedom in my life. I want to do what I love. And so I had been doing acrobatics and, parkour, free running, all that kind of stuff for a few years, about 5 or so years. And I met this guy, this American guy who'd come over to Australia. And he used to do street performing over in New York City. And so he was like, oh, hey, we're going to start up a little crew over here in Australia. Why don't you join? I'm like, oh, okay, sweet. So me and my best friend, we joined him. We were doing shows. And at that point, we were just there to have fun, like we didn't have any expectations it was going to turn into a job or a career. So we just joined him. We did a couple of performances with him. And then at the end of the day, he hands each of us $40. And we're like freaking out. We're like, we're there not expecting to get paid because we just love doing it, And so he hands us each $40 and we're freaking out. We're like, oh my gosh, we made $40 just flipping. Like, this is ridiculous. And so that was like a very insane moment for me, just like looking back on that. It really gave me confirmation that I can make money, not just from like an hourly wage, right? And so that was quite a beautiful moment.
And also doing something that you enjoy.
Yeah, exactly. Getting paid to do something that I love to do and have fun with friends. It was awesome.
Cool. So you said flipping. So that's when you like flip in the air, right?
Yeah. So we had one of the performances, like at the end of the show, part of the show was we'd get audience members to come out and they would bend over and there'd be like 4 or 5 people in a row and we'd run up and flip over. And so that was like the last piece of the show that everyone loved. But yeah, pretty cool stuff.
Holy cow. That's incredible.
It was lots of fun. And I think the biggest thing from it is just like being able to bring people together and like have them laugh and smile and have an enjoyable time. Because like, yeah, it's so amazing just seeing people have a fun time and smiling for once, you know?
So you and your friend, you guys did this for a few months, a year or two.
Yeah, we did it for 3 years, I think it was. And so I made a living from street performing for 3 years. And yeah, it was pretty decent money actually. Like you'd be surprised, like you'd think, oh, there's people on the street asking for money, but we actually made some pretty decent money and we had a couple of gigs on the side as well. So yeah, it was a great time. Like made a lot of money, flipping with friends, had a lot of fun, and lived like that for 3 years.
And then you said you had an injury and then you guys had to pivot. We
Yeah,
don't have to go into the injury, but could you talk a bit about like the pivoting side and how you made a choice following?
yeah, definitely. So obviously like street performing was my life and I loved it. And unfortunately I had an ACL injury. So I had to get surgery on my knee and that put me out for a year. And so that was a very dark, depressing time because, you know, I'd lost everything I loved, everything I wish I wanted in the future. So it sucked and it was a very depressing time. But it gave me an opportunity to reflect and transition to some other cool stuff, you know, which is I started looking at online business stuff and I was like, okay, cool. If I can make money on the street, sure, I can make money online somehow. And so I just started looking at all these different ideas and just playing around with things. And I think the biggest thing is just like realizing that when something goes wrong in your life or something bad happens, is like there's always a good experience that comes from that or a good event that comes from that. So it's about like staying positive after those negative things happen. Because like if I could have just like sat in my sorrows and been all depressed and, you know, hated my life because I had that injury, but instead I chose to make the most of it and utilize it as an opportunity to go online. And so yeah, from there, I pretty much started up a couple of things. They totally failed. Did like drop shipping and, you know, all these different business models and nothing ever worked. Just because I was not in the right mind space to make it work, you know? And so, yeah, a lot of failures later, eventually stumbled across a couple of things that worked. Got a couple clients for an agency that I started. And then from there, started coaching people on how to run their own agency. And then now we're doing Facebook group stuff. So yeah, it's just like the progression, you know, nothing happened instantly. It was definitely happened over time. But yeah, it was a very, very pivotal moment, I would say.
Going into more of the online business side, how do you see online businesses take off in the past few years from your own experience? Do you find it to be much more freeing, much more easy, on the easier side, time-wise, but also traveling-wise?
100%, definitely. So it took me a while to get through everything and get to a point where I'm at now. And I'm still not like totally where I want to be, but right now I have like what I like to call a freedom business, right? Like it runs itself. I probably work about 4 hours a week on the business itself. So it leaves me a lot of time to work on my passions and the other things, that other projects I want to work on, right? So, and it provides me more than enough income to live off and travel and do what I want. So I think it's really such an amazing thing to look into and build because it truly does give you that freedom with not just finances, but also time, right? Because if you know how to run a business and how to build the structure of a business, you're building a team and building systems and automation and all this kind of stuff, you start to create something that brings you some money without you needing to put your direct time input into it. So yeah, it's huge like potential online at the moment. There's just so many different ways to make money and so many people are crushing it.
Most definitely. I know that we're seeing that from ourselves and our own team members. We're just finding ways on taking what we've been doing the past 2.5 years now and finding ways on monetizing it and help spreading it so we can help increase education. So could you educate me a bit about what the Facebook groups are?
Yeah, sure. So like one of the businesses I run currently, we basically manage people's Facebook groups for them because there's so much power in having an audience, right? If you have an audience, you can sell them stuff. And so essentially what we do is we help build that audience for people as well as post content to nurture that and engage that audience. And then we also do what's called appointment setting. So we basically come in and have conversations with each of the group members. and book them into sales calls for whoever the client is. So that's kind of what the service looks like that we're running at the moment. Because there's just so much power in audiences, you know, and community is definitely a big thing.
So working with Facebook groups, are you focused more on seeing the impact of helping communities build and be able to get connected with other people?
Yeah, definitely. And at the moment, I'm actually launching another community, which is like we're going to be more focused around building a community of people who are looking to build like a freedom business, kind of like what I've done, right? And just create this eco space where it's like a lot of people supporting and there's like so much contribution happening. I think that's so important to have community. It's the one thing I wish I had more of when I was starting out online, just because it gets real lonely. You know, you don't have anyone to connect with around you in person. And so you're doing this thing alone online in isolation, and it gets really lonely. So I think community is very, very powerful to move you forward for anything, right? Communities have existed since man existed, you know, like it's always been something that's kept us alive and surviving. So I think community is so important no matter what you're doing or what you're trying to achieve or what's the vision. Like having people around you and the right people around you who are bought into that vision, share the same values is so, so important. So yeah, I've definitely learned that community is such a massive part of success and achieving things together, because yeah, just from building all these different Facebook groups, I've seen like how much people can achieve just by coming together. So it's been powerful.
I know from my own personal experience, Facebook groups have been a big part. This past summer, I was interning for a company in a new state, and I knew no one except for one or two people close by. But otherwise, just try and find new ways of meeting new people was quite, I would say, difficult. But then I found Facebook groups about people who love to go hiking in the area. So just being able to meet up with new people and even know about the spots themselves, so I can go on my own at odd times and just be able to explore and see what nature has from what others see. It's incredible.
Yeah, it's amazing, isn't it? And like you feel like you find your tribe, you know, like especially when you have common interests, shared beliefs, or whatever it is that brings you together. It's like you feel like you belong, and that's a very strong feeling.
So talking about like-minded people, do you have other individuals working with you on your team and the company?
Yeah, definitely. So whenever I hire, I make a big note to like make sure that when I'm hiring, it's all about attitude, not experience. You know, I think it's really important that someone has the right attitude and values and beliefs if they're going to come into the company and work, as opposed to just having the experience, right? So I don't look at anyone's resume. I don't really care what they've done or what they've achieved. It's more important to me like how they show up and how they treat things. And that's really the key, because if they have that attitude and that belief, they can buy into the vision and the why behind what you're doing, why you're doing what you're doing. And when they're bought into that vision, no matter what they do, it's going to align with that, right? And so the experience doesn't really matter so much anymore, because if they align to the vision, they're going to do things the right way always. And so that's really the key that I found when hiring or like, you know, working with people even, really just find people that you can gel with really well on the attitude and values and belief side of things, not just like the experience side of things.
When you do have new employees, do you guys like meet in person sometimes, or is it all an online working environment?
Yeah, so yeah, all online. Which does get tricky sometimes. It'd be cool to like catch up in person, but yeah, it's all right. You can get around it. You can go to Zoom calls and whatever. Yeah, all online.
So I'm asking out of experience of our own team being half virtual and half in person, just based on where people live. How do you find ways on working and building the team culture then, and the company culture?
Yeah, definitely. So I think it's using the platforms that you have available to you, right? So, you know, jumping on your team meetings on Zoom and whatever, and keeping it fun and exciting and like keeping people engaged is definitely important. But also like just in messages, you know, in the chat, you know, obviously you should have team chats going on and stuff. And yeah, just keeping people really excited about what you're working on and passionate about it in that chat, you know, sharing updates on how things are going, like not keeping them so like behind the sidelines, but like keeping them aware of the progress that is happening on the day to day and the week to week, the month to month, just like being excited about that progress. Yeah, that really builds culture because people love being part of something that's like growing and something that's progressing, and they feel like they're contributing to that. So I think, yeah, sharing wins and sharing growth is like very, very key.
That's actually one of our favorite things on the team is small wins matter. No matter how small something is or how big, if it's important to someone, it's important to everyone.
Exactly. I love that. That's a great way to approach it.
You mentioned that right now you're also traveling through Australia. Do you want to talk a bit about how that experience has helped you grow as an individual?
Yeah, definitely. So I'm actually doing at the moment what's called house sitting. So basically just like you come into a random stranger's house, you look after their house for the time they're gone. It's a great way to get free accommodation. So I'm like, yeah, why not? I can get around Australia, free accommodation, see different parts of Australia that I haven't been to before. So that's essentially what I'm doing. And I think, yeah, just after watching like a bunch of different videos on like, money and understanding how money works and stuff, it's all about creating as big a gap as you can between your expenses and how much you make. So that's kind of what I've been focused on is like, okay, how can I reduce my expenses? And the biggest expense I had was rent, right? So I was like, well, cool, if I can cut that expense of rent, still be able to like travel as well for free is awesome. So it cuts that massive expense of rent and just makes that gap a bit wider, which is nice for investing or saving or whatever else. So yeah, but traveling's amazing. Like being able to see different places, meet different people. I've been trying to make a habit of like approaching people just in public and starting conversations. Or even if it's just like going up to some old guy and asking, hey, what advice would you give to your younger self or whatever. You get some pretty insightful conversations. So yeah, it's been fun to like just go around, and I really want to go overseas because Australia is kind of sick of it already. I've been here all my life, so I'm like, oh, I need to go, but that'll come eventually.
Yeah, no, definitely I agree. Just being able to go see other countries, it's incredible. Meet new people. I know myself and one other team member, we went to Austria right before COVID happened. Honestly, actually, it was like 2 weeks before it all began walking down. And I know that experience changed the way I thought and just made me think about how I can grow and become better and just explore more.
Exactly. Have you traveled much?
My family and I, we traveled. We would go on a trip maybe every year. Mainly, would go to Canada, so a tad bit north of us, and then Puerto Rico once or twice, and then California here and there. But we'd stay mainly the U.S. Aside from the only trip outside the U.S. was to Austria, Germany, about 2.5 years ago. Beautiful trip. It was for a conference for a program I'm in through Stanford University. So we got to meet other students in the program from other universities. A lot of them were from the Netherlands. A lot of kids from there we still talk to the day. And it was an amazing community where we kind of just like all came in. We had about 7 my friends come from my school, and then we had about 30 in total. And the community we built between one another in a week's time was incredible. And when we all walked away, we still kept our group chats going and just being able to know what's happening in one another's lives and just continue talking and being around each other. And I know a few of the people there, they actually met up with one another here and there since then. I know me and my friend, we've been talking to the kids from the Netherlands quite a bit. And I'll be honest, like the way we live here and the way they live there, it's a tad bit different. So it's always interesting to hear about what they have going on. But that goes to the point of community and being able to build one and learn from one another and just enjoy life. Because that trip, that's in my life.
Yeah, I love that. That sounds like an amazing experience. It's so awesome just like meeting people and then you stay in touch and you're like, oh my gosh, this is so cool. They have like a little relationship going on here. Like never would have thought. But it's yeah, Germany's very interesting, isn't it? My sister actually is living over there at the moment. So definitely a different, very different place to live.
Oh, most definitely. Buildings, one of the best buildings I've seen architecture wise. They're nice and old. The food pretty good too. The schnitzel, oh, amazing.
Good old schnitzels and beers.
Cool. Okay, so taking a tad bit of a pivot, do you have a few lessons that you've learned the past few years that made a gigantic impact on where you've been heading lately?
I would say it's doing more of the internal work, right? A lot of people don't want to do it, and a lot of people don't even know where to start. But really, if you can get your mind right, you can achieve anything. Really, it's really as simple as that. Because you think of how many people have achieved so many great things, and they started with nothing. You know, like they started with nothing, but they had the belief in themselves to go and make it happen. And so I think it's so important to do that internal work. And I've done that multiple times, and I will continue to do it because there's always things that pop up as you progress and as you grow and you evolve. There's always new problems and obstacles you've got to battle within yourself. So I think it's so important just to have some more awareness of what's going on within your mind and your thought patterns and beliefs and all this kind of stuff. One thing that's really helped me with that is understanding the whole concept of feel, think, act. So everything comes from your emotional state. How you're feeling will affect how you're thinking, and how you're thinking will affect your actions. And so if you're very reactive to things and you find yourself reacting to situations all the time, right? Something bad happens and you're like, oh no, I feel really bad because of that. You know, that reaction, that feeling is going to cause you to start thinking negatively and then acting negatively. So it's just trying to call yourself out on some of those patterns. That really, really helps. You know, if you notice that you commonly get angry at stuff, like try and call out that pattern. Like, okay, cool, I'm not going to be angry this time. I'm going to try and be more calm, relaxed, like cool about it. Just start to be more detached from everything. So yeah, it's just a lot of awareness, I would say, is the big word.
That's really interesting. Being able to focus on your emotions and have that be a primary source on how you make decisions. So connecting that to belief, do you have any tips on how you stay optimistic or positive during tough situations or tough problems?
I think for me, it's all about detachment, you know, like I wouldn't say expect failure, but be ready for it, right? And just like be totally detached from that outcome. Like it obviously happened for a reason. Something didn't work out. Now work out what that is, right? Don't be focused on the actual failure itself. Be focused on why it happened. And so I think, yeah, detachment is definitely the key, because if you let it get you into a rut, again, like back to when I had my injury, I didn't let that negative event affect me mentally, So I think it's really important about being detached from the event and realizing that that's happening outside of you, right? You're in control of what happens inside. So it's really about trying to detach those two things and not being reactive to what's happening. Instead, like creating from the internal out instead of from the outside in. So yeah, just a little bit of a shift, I guess.
Did you have the opportunity to share this lesson with someone as you saw them having their emotions more so dictate how they're acting?
Yeah, definitely. I've shared this with many, many people, and it's been a huge impact to their lives. Just being able to be more aware of those negative thought patterns, because we always get in our own way. We self-sabotage so frequently, no matter what it is, right? Like, oh, I want to become a famous musician. You're like, all these negative doubts will come up. You're like, oh, but I'm not that good. I don't know anyone famous. Like, I'm not going to be able to have the connections to make this work. Like, you have all these negative doubts and self-doubt come up. That's just not helpful in your life. So I think if you can really focus on, like I said, doing that internal work, getting really clear on, okay, what are the common beliefs and common traits that keep popping up for me? How can I break these down? Yeah, huge impact. And I've told a couple of people about it, and life is just like 180. They've gone in a completely different direction just because they've realized that they're in control, right? They have control of their mind. They have control of their thoughts and what they want to do. So I think it's, stepping back into that creator.
And this is actually a conversation I had with many of my friends in the past couple of years. And one conclusion we had was understanding where that source of doubt comes from initially. So before I share my thoughts, where do you think that initial doubt comes from?
There's a lot of programming from like childhood and past experiences. So and also expectations from other people. So you hear stories of other stuff happening, so you start to believe it. So I think, yeah, all those kinds of different things come into one to really form those beliefs that you have right now, right? For example, your parents might never have been financially free, so you'll be like, oh, it's not possible for me, right? You start to form that belief. So it's just, yeah, trying to battle some of those childhood programming things and from your past, and just, yeah, really aggressively change those. It's difficult because you've got to take it one step at a time instead of just going all out and be like, no, I'm going to change this belief. Like, you've got to break it down and slowly get through it. And then there's like hidden beliefs within the belief. There's like your brain's just so smart. It really just tricks you in so many different ways. So you've got to be really smart with having the awareness to start calling out some of those mini beliefs and then break down the bigger beliefs and so on and so forth.
And I agree. I know for myself, I've been a distance runner for quite a few years. And in the beginning, I honestly couldn't believe what some of my team members were doing, like the times they were running or how far they would go. But then after a year or two, I began believing myself and seeing, oh, it's not that difficult. If I put my mind to it, train up to it, and work together at it, and we just began drilling down on it. But I feel like there's another component that's more on the nature side than like in the past. Because when humans were first around, they would always have the instinct of, oh, so many things can kill me that we need to always take that step back, be a bit more cautious because death is all around. But now, as we have more of a luxury and not being afraid of different animals coming after us, it's more of, I would say, like a defense mechanism.
Yeah, definitely is. Definitely is. Survival instincts.
Taking another pivot, do you read books? Do you have any favorite books you've read recently? Or
yeah, there's a bunch of great books. I really like Cybernetics for mindset stuff. That's a great book. And then there's also, I love the 4-Hour Workweek because obviously, like, that's kind of the lifestyle I'm living right now. So yeah, I really love that book. Just talks about how to build a business that gives you time freedom. And then there's also one that I'm reading at the moment called Start With Why. That's a very powerful book. Really just about building, about building that vision and getting people aligned to that vision, and they can all see the reason why they're doing what they're doing. So it's a huge book for team building, and especially if you run a team, like, very, very good book to have. Yeah, those are probably the 3 I'd recommend. So Cybernetics, Start With Why, and then the 4-Hour Workweek.
Have you began thinking more about if you start with your why and be able to give people that passion point and try and influence them and get their buy-in quicker? Do you see that being a more efficient and productive way on getting someone to buy into an idea than starting with just what it is and the impact?
100%. It totally is. And that's why I like this new community that I'm building. I'm not going to focus on selling it through like the deliverables or like, what you get when you buy it. It's like, no one really cares, right? Hey, you get 2 coaching calls a week. Like, no one really cares, right? So I'm not going to focus on like selling it like that. The focus is selling on the vision, the why. Like, why is this community here and why should you be a part of it? That's really the big selling point for it. So I think it's been so powerful to tap into that why and that passion behind it, because that's really what people buy into. When they see that vision, they see that why, and they feel so drawn to it, like, they'll just buy, they'll just join because they feel like they need to have it.
And they just have that good feeling inside, and they're like, oh, this is the one that makes me feel good. I connect to it, and I see how it impacts me, but then also impacts others like that.
Exactly. Huge impact.
And then the other book you said, the 4-Hour Workweek, I do have the one, but I've not began it. Been working on a few others. But do you have a few lessons from there that you can see yourself living in person now and make that connection to?
Yeah, definitely. I think it's really, the big thing I got from it is just optimizing your time, right? learning more about like delegation and automation as two big keys to free up your time, right? Whether you're running a business or you're running a team, like it's really about, okay, how much time can I free up for myself by, finding someone else to do this role, or like, do this thing or automate this thing. Like, so yeah, I think really key thing from that book is just about freeing up your time and creating systems and processes and a team in place to fill that time for you.
Like, how long were you working out, say, in the beginning?
Yeah, so in the beginning, I mean, I started like, so when I first started online, I was like so bought into the hustle culture of like, you've got to work so hard to make it happen, And so I was putting in like 12-hour days, going to bed at like 3 or 4 a.m. at night. And so it was pretty crazy because one night I was working till like 4 a.m. and I passed out and like hit my head, and I woke up in hospital. And so that was a very scary experience. So I was like, well, crap, like I can't be doing these 12-hour days. This is not going to work. This is not sustainable. And so that was kind of like another pivotal moment to start looking at, systems and team building and all that kind of stuff. And eventually, yeah, it got to a point where I just started cutting down the hours and went from 12 down to 10, and then went down to 8 and went down to 6, and eventually went down to an hour a day. And so just like eventually over time, just cutting down the hours. Yeah, eventually after enough of doing that, you get down to, right now where I work about 4 hours a week. And yeah, it's pretty cool to go from like working 12-hour days to like 4-hour weeks. It's like a totally different thing.
That sounds good. And something I know I need to do a tad bit more of my own day. Cool. And then the third book you mentioned, I actually have not heard about that one before. Can you tell me a bit about it?
Yeah, so Cybernetics is an amazing book for mindset. It's got a lot of have you heard of NLP, like neuro linguistic programming?
I have not.
So it's basically like talks about the programming of your brain and like why things are the way they are. And so NLP is like a very core foundational thing of like changing your mindset and stuff. I haven't gone too deep on NLP, but there's a lot of NLP stuff in the Cybernetics book that is very, very interesting. So yeah, it just talks about like rewiring and reprogramming your brain to have successful, positive beliefs and values and traits and all this stuff. So highly recommend that if you like find yourself struggling with the mindset side of things. It'll put a lot into perspective and you'll understand a lot more by reading that book.
And do they mention in the book the method you were talking about earlier, focusing on the feeling side for making choices?
I think a little bit, yeah. I think a little bit, but I got that concept from one of the courses I went through a while back, some mindset course. And that's the thing. I think people will need to find what works for them. There's going to be different approaches to different problems. And so it's just about finding what approach you want to latch onto as the solution. So, for some people, they might like, one way of approaching mindset issues, or some people might like a different way. And so there's like tons of different books on mindset. So one might resonate with you more than the others. But yeah, I'd definitely say Cybernetics is a pretty good all-round book. And I think a lot of people would gain a lot of value from it.
Yeah, those are 3 amazing books. The Cypress one and the other 2, the 4-Hour Workweek and Start Your Why. Amazing books, and a great one to get deep dive into the mindset side and owning business side. Yeah. So another question I have for you is, how do you define a leader versus a manager?
Ooh, good question. Good question. And this is something I've been trying to get better at, is becoming a leader instead of that manager, because it's easy to manage. It's hard to lead. And so, yeah, I think the difference is not something you can explain very well, because like a leader just shows up in a different way, right? They make the team feel in a different way than a manager does, right? A manager's just kind of there overseeing things and overlooking things. The leader's more inspiring and more part of the team, right? You feel like they're like a co-worker almost, right? The leader is like in the trenches with you, like doing the work, like holding your hand, like leading you, right? So yeah, I don't know. That's an interesting question because I'm still exploring that, and I wouldn't say I'm anywhere close to like being a great leader yet. But that's something I definitely want to work on, and I think leadership qualities and leadership skills are definitely important.
During one of our team workouts, not with my company, but a group I had before, I was working with before, we have a fitness challenge, and we had to do a specific set of different workouts in a row, and it was a challenge. And if you get X number of, like, say, 80 push-ups in 2 minutes, 80 sit-ups in 2 minutes, you run 1.5 miles in under 10 minutes, then you essentially are completing this challenge. And during my time in the program, no one has ever completed the challenge. The first activity is swimming. After anyone swims, they're all usually dead. And the last one is running. So no one ever was able to complete the challenge. But lucky for me, I actually was a runner, and I'm also not the one who completed the challenge. But instead, during the running, I knew we had one team member who got everything done. And when it came time for the run, the last one, he was gassed. He had no motivation. He was not, pretty much his day went from being happy to, I just wanted to end. And I told him, hey, Bob, just look at my back and just follow me, and we'll help get you to complete the challenge. And he was like, hey, okay. Of course, he didn't say any words because he was a bit gassed out. But for that mile and a half, he just looked at my back and we just kept going. I kept him on pace. And I believe it was the last 200-300 meters. I looked behind me. Bob was out of sight. He was on the side throwing up in the trash can. And I thought to myself, if he begins again and I go get him, he can go finish it and he can even beat the time. And Tom, in the end, Bob, he beat the time by 1 second, and he did complete the challenge.
Damn, that's crazy.
So going back to the practice, encourage the heart. So the following meeting, at the end, Bob went up to make an announcement after he received the honor, and he brought up a jar of salsa, a nice and spicy one. And he was like, team, here I have a jar of salsa. It's nice and spicy. It's something that will make your tongue sizzle. It's something that you'll be like, oh, it's kind of spicy right now. But afterwards, you'll have that refreshment. And it's like, oh, that was good salsa. The chips, amazing. And this jar and salsa, it's just like one person in here, someone who had that little bit of sizzle, fire, and in the end pulled through and had a bit of care about who I am and what I wanted to achieve. And that person's Nelson, because he went out of his way to help me in this difficult time of completing the challenge, a time I honestly did not want to because I was just too gassed out. And essentially, encourage the heart, he made that connection of an object to what that person has done. And I would say it's an amazing way to not only show someone recognition, but make it fun and make it memorable.
Definitely. I love that. That's such a cool way to do it.
Yeah, so the Leadership Challenge, amazing book, talked about servant leadership and anyone who wants to help empower others to grow. So, Tom, coming up towards the end of our episode today, is there anything else you'd like to add to the audience listening to us today?
It sounds cliche, but I'd just say believe in yourself.
And with that, we conclude another episode of Young Entrepreneurs with the Green Roof team. With our special guest, Tom Wedding. We had an amazing episode, and we hope you can join us again next time. And stay sustainable, folks.